So Drake Bell had an interview with a lady that I had never heard of before. And they talked about Dan Schneider. They spoke about Dan Schneider, they talked about Dan Schneider, and there was a portion in it that I thought was very important to talk about here on my platform. So let's go ahead and listen to it.
Where are you with Dan Schneider? I mean, in the documentary, you say Dan is the one that was one of the only people that called you when this happened and said, "How can I help? What can I do?" Dan's come out with a video. He did an interview yesterday and said, "I owe people very deep apologies." I mean, you're kind of the only person that comes to his defense a little in the documentary, whereas he didn't have the sexual abuse or assault claims, but certainly that he was a tyrant to work with. I mean, has anything? How do you feel? How do you handle that relationship?
I mean, I can't take anything away from anyone's experience, especially things that I didn't see or things I wasn't there for. I can only speak on what my experience was. And at that time, no Nickelodeon executives reached out to me. I learned later through the letters that there were actually people who wrote letters and they were sealed. So not everyone on set knew who had written letters. But I learned that later. I mean, there were multiple people that had supported him that went on to work on on Drake and Josh. And I worked with these people every day, and I thought they were my friends. And they were people in positions of power where they were my bosses. I mean, they were directors or they were producers or they were, it was a situation where I was surrounded by, I thought I was safe. I thought I was okay. I got rid of, the cancer has been carved out. Like we're better now. And I had no idea that for 4 years I was working alongside people who had supported him and probably in the back of their mind were, thinking of me in a certain way. And I thought they were my friends. But
Now, to clear things up, who he's talking about is Brian Peck, the creeper who preyed on Drake. I just wanted to clear that up. They do take a little bit of a detour into Brian Peck and that whole situation within this interview clip. But I think it's important to talk about this too.
Now,
like I said,
for context, when you say that these letters were sealed, right? And now, of course, you've had Ryder Strong, you've had other actors come out that wrote letters for him and said, well, we didn't realize the full extent of what he was charged with and accused. He told us a whole different story. And I think you have thoughts on that. But when you say that they were sealed, at the time, did these executives know that it was you? Or because you were a minor, your identity was kept secret? They might have known, like, maybe you had worked with him, or did they know it was you?
okay, I can't speak for someone else and give a 100% yes, everyone, these people knew, but there were 50. I mean, I say 50. I don't know how many people a courtroom holds, but there were, I mean, I know that there was at least 41 who wrote the letters. But when we went to court, his entire side of the courtroom was full of directors, producers, writers, actors. It was just mind blowing. And I was just sent into like a state of shock when I walked into that courtroom, and people that I thought were my friends, people who knew me, people who I worked with. And so to say that people in the industry didn't know, I mean, I think would be a little naive.
And to me, that right there is the heartbreaking part. Like, I had no idea, because I haven't seen the documentary, because I don't have Max. But I had no idea that Ryder Strong and Will Friedle, you know, I didn't know that the Matthews brothers were also part of this, and it just goes to show you that when you have a parasocial relationship like we did with these actors, like we did with these Disney actors, these Nickelodeon actors, when you have that parasocial relationship, you don't really know who you're speaking to, who you're talking to. You kind of have to, as we get older, learn that parasocial relationships a lot of times are not good, and a lot of times they're really icky and they're really bad. And even the people who have like the best intentions to have a good, solid online presence or TV presence, and they're really good with fans and they don't do anything wrong and they're on the up and up, like a Chris Pratt, for instance. Um, Even then, with a person who really does respect his fans and respects people around him, even then you have to be cautious of a parasocial. Don't get sucked in to these relationships with these people, because you don't know what's behind the camera. You don't know what's behind the screen. And we didn't know that as kids, but now as adults, we can kind of look at this and be like, this really sucks. But imagine how it feels for Drake. Imagine how it feels for Drake Bell. People you thought were your friends. People you thought supported you on the other side for this creeper. But it gets worse.
Because everyone talks, everyone And so, because when Dan reached out to me, it was prior to the court hearing where everyone was there. And so it made sense for him to ask me, does this have anything to do with you? Did Brian hurt you? Are you okay? Like, is this, and I responded, because I had worked with Dan for quite some time at this point, and I felt comfortable enough in our relationship to be able to open up to him more than I would probably somebody else. And I just told him, I said, yeah, Dan, like, this is what he's been doing, and this is what he did. And he got very, I think he was being sensitive to me because he knew what I was probably dealing with. But I could tell in his voice that there was a lot of hurt and anger, and but he was very sensitive to me.
And as creepy as we all believe Dan Schneider to be, as inappropriate as we believe him to be, as not okay as we believe him to be, um, if what Drake is saying is true, which I'm gonna believe him, because this is recollection, and he also says he can't speak on behalf of other people. But if this is true, this is 1 point in favor of Dan Schneider. Now he has like 9,999 points against him, but he has 1 point in favor of him because, yeah. Congratulations, Dan. You acted like a human being for once in your miserable life.
And that was my experience. So, but watching the documentary, you hear other people's the things that other people are saying, and you can't, especially with what I've been through. And you just have to. I can only react and respond to what I've actually experienced.
Sure.
And also not say anything that would take away from somebody else having the comfortability and the strength and the bravery to tell their story, and to share their experiences. So,
and that right there is something I can really respect in regards to Drake Bell, because he's telling what happened with him in regards to Dan, but he is not taking away or not pulling away from what his co-stars may have felt, what other actors and actresses may have felt in that time period. He's not going to take away from that. He refuses to take away from that. And that's what I can respect about him, because he can acknowledge that Dan did a good thing for him, while also acknowledging that these other horrible things could possibly have happened. And that is why I truly respect Drake Bell right now. I do. And I have sympathy for him. I understand the things that happened in Ohio. That was wrong. But I think he's come to grips and come to terms with reality that what he did was wrong. So I'm not going to beat him over the head for his involvement in this. I'm going to showcase grace. I hope that his victims can showcase grace towards him. But that's ultimately for them. But I respect Drake in this instance where he's like, I cannot speak on behalf of other people. I can only speak on my behalf. And I'm not going to take away from the trauma and the torment that other people faced. Good job, Drake.
But he was he really helped me through that time. It was shocking. So and then learning later. I mean, it was totally re-traumatizing to later get these letters, which I just got last year, and seeing. I mean, it was every letter I turned, it broke my heart when I would see the name at the end of the letter and go, "What? We worked. I thought we were friends." And the way that they portrayed me in the letters and all
Oh
of
my
this.
God. I mean, in the documentary that you had to be that Brian had to be tempted. I mean, this is a fucking minor. It's like, what?
Well, I was also. I mean.
Sorry, I should be.
I'm sorry. Again, did not see the documentary. Did not see it, but I've seen enough videos recapping the documentary to know what happened in it. At this point, I don't even think I need to have the HBO Max subscription to know what's happening in it, because so many people are talking about it. But for people who worked with Drake to say that he must have tempted Brian Peck, how repulsive can that be? A child tempting an adult. Let's just say Drake did everything wrong. Everything inappropriate, was the most crude, crass, inappropriate kid you could possibly imagine. I don't believe that was the case, but let's just say for in all intents and purposes, and for the sake of this argument, that's what the case was. Brian's the adult. Drake's the child. Drake doesn't know any better. Drake does not know a dang thing of what's going on here, because his brain hasn't developed. I'm not going to shirk all responsibility off of kids who do this, because there are kids that know what they're doing. But what I'm saying is, An adult knows better. An adult knows to distance himself away from a minor that could be, quote, tempting him. Don't fall into the temptation, Brian, if that's the case. Now, we're going to find out later on in this interview that that's not the case, but even if it was the case, Brian, you're an adult. You know not to fall into the temptation. So to put all of the onus on Drake, who was a child at the time, just really pisses me the heck off.
No.
But
It's
I mean,
okay.
it's outrageous. I mean, you watch this and your blood boils. Your blood boils as a parent, but as a fan of these shows, as like now working, still in the entertainment business. I mean, these letters from respectable actors and actresses is, I mean, for them to say, oh well, Brian had to be in a position. He just couldn't say no. I mean, about a grown man.
Full-fledged adult. Full-fledged adult. He knew what he was doing. Grown man. Grown man. I have zero sympathy for him. And whoever these actors and actresses were, have zero sympathy for you either. My respect for all of you just went out the window. Out the window after hearing this. Absolutely disgusting. And my prayers go out to Drake. They really do.
Yeah. And the first, I say this in the documentary, but the first experience when it started to shift and go south, I was sleeping on his couch, which I'd done many times before and didn't feel anything strange, and there was never anything weird. And I mean, maybe I did have some feelings of like, okay, like, come on, dude, like, but I woke up to it happening. And so to read that he must have been so pressured and tempted, and this, I'm like, I mean, and every time I slept on his couch, I mean, I would, it's like when you sleep over at your friends, it's like, I didn't like change into pajamas. I didn't like I was in my jeans and my shoes were probably on the floor, on the floor, and I was in my shirt that I was like in my clothes, like I just like crashed on the couch. But then waking up to that and then reading this in the letters, it's like, but what did I do? I woke up to this happen.
And that right there is the repulsive part. Drake was jeans, t-shirt, all that. So even if we're going with their argument, which is a very flimsy argument at best, going with their argument that he must have tempted Brian, he was in jeans and a freaking t-shirt. You can't get any more clothed than that. You can't get any more put together clothed than jeans and a freaking t-shirt. So even your flimsy argument falls on its face badly. Like, give me a break, guys.
And so it's just, it's tragic. And I'm sure that, people were told different things but at the end of the day, if you have a friend sit you down and say, I did this thing with a minor, but it's his fault, and try and frame it. I mean, I couldn't imagine a way that someone would frame that to where I would then still be their friend. I mean, unless it was, I'm being accused of something. I did not do this. It's going to come out. They're going to do an investigation. They've done it. They're doing an investigation. Someone is saying something happened and it did not happen. And this is going to be proven and you will see, please get behind me. That I could understand friends going, all right, well, let's let this play out. Let me see where this goes. Let's see this play out. And at sentencing, if these things come out and they're proven false, then all right. But to sit there and say, yes, I did this.
Yeah, he confessed.
But it's not how they're painting it. I mean, I can't imagine framing it in a way where 41 people, adults, say, oh, well, that totally makes sense how you're telling me. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it must be a real pain. I'm not saying this in a sarcastic way. It must be very difficult and very hard for Drake to come out and say this stuff and talk about this stuff for people that he thought he was connected with, that he felt were friends of his. Try to take the creepy producer's side? For what reason? Just to get a leg up in the entertainment industry, or what? What was the freaking reason, guys? Because I see no reason in doing that at all, at all. But let's listen to the saddest part of this entire clip.
Has anyone called you and genuinely apologized, and you feel they are sincere?
That wrote the letters?
Yeah, or anyone in general? Wow, no one.
No one that wrote the letters. Tom DeSanto, the producer from X-Men, he released a statement, an apology statement, which I really appreciate. And, that was really, I mean, I want to say brave because this is a very, very tough thing for everyone involved. I mean, and that's what happens when people like Brian do what they do. It creates, it's a ripple effect. And so that was really cool of him to do. But no, I haven't gotten an apology or sorry, my brain, from anybody that had written letters or was involved in supporting him at all.
And there's the clip. That's it. That has to be some of the saddest stuff you'll hear in a long time. I will link the full interview in my description. I think you need to take a listen to it. But God bless Drake. My prayers are with him. I think he came out with a new music video that covers this exact topic as well. But I thought that it was necessary to talk about Dan Schneider and Brian Peck and really just try to unpack it from my perspective, from what I've seen of this. And it's really just heartbreaking for everyone, for Drake, for all the actors and actresses that were tormented by Dan Schneider, for the fans who are heartbroken, but the fans, they're the last people to be affected by this, but they're still affected by it, you know? So I am praying. I hope that he's able to find healing. I hope that he's able to find peace. I really am. He seems to be having a grand old time in Mexico City. And so I'm very happy for him. And I hope that his career continues to flourish because he needs to find clarity in life. But I will say this, the line where he says, "No one wants to hear me in the States."
'Cause no one wants to hear me in the States, so I'm running away.
That couldn't be further from the truth, Drake. Take care and God bless everyone. Bye.